my friends, I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table. We got little Missy sitting over here in the sun behind me, and this is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition official game accessory for the Forgotten Realms called the Great Glacier by Rick Swan. And this was an interesting setting, and I got it because it kind of fills a niche in the grand scheme of the map. The Great Glacier is this huge region in northeastern central Faerun in the Great North, and very little is known about it. So when this came out, I landed on it pretty big. Here is a map of Waterdeep. So I'm going to guess that this does not belong in this supplement. That this here map of Waterdeep, so it says Waterdeep there, belongs in something else. I don't know what, but it belongs in something else. So let's see, leave it to be. We got our cover. Cover is not really usable for, you could use it as a partial screen if you wanted to, but the only thing inside it is glossary of selected Ulutium terms. Right. So if you were to look at pretty much every YouTube video on the Great White North in north of the Arctic Circle and life in the north of the Arctic Circle, that would be everything you need to know pretty much about the Great Glacier and its region. So we have a number of regional native groups. Majority of them are human. They tend to live, like I said, very Eskimo-like lives. One group is totally dependent on following caribou, and they use portable tents and stuff like this. And two of the other groups are big hunters for like seal and other stuff of that nature, and they build igloos, their version of igloos, and then so on. So we're talking some extreme environments. Just normal activity in the Great Glacier would be just like normal activity in Antarctica or in the deep Arctic. Above the Arctic Circle region, you have to be painfully aware of your situation all the time. You won't get a lot of second chances with the weather being extreme as it is. And of course, being a primitive tribe, I mean, you're living off the land and whatever you can catch, and there's not a lot of flora, not a lot of plants and animals. There are not significant numbers for you to utilize to barely supplement your diet, let alone any other reason. So a lot of these are completely meat-based or damn near meat and fish-based diets, and but the advantages and disadvantages that come with that. So that said, the majority of the source book is detailing these specific groups, because it starts down and you get history, geography, people, flora and fauna, places, personalities, and then a snowy baby and adventure, and then some new monsters that are suitable for the Great Desert. So birth of the Great Glacier, timeline, right? So here's what they talk about. So campaign notes. In a nutshell, the campaign notes. Here you go, right? Campaign notes. The DM pre-uses the book, particularly when she develops her own Great Glacier adventure, and when she is tired of keeping the following point, or try to keep the following points in mind. Think cold, think hungry, think isolated, think lost, and that's your normal day. That's normal day. From the minute you get up, the minute you try to bundle yourself up into some kind of method to keep yourself from freezing to death at night, you are subject to the wind, the cold, the elements, period. And the lack of material, the lack of foodstuffs, the lack of supplies, the lack of people. That's another thing. The populations on the Great Glacier are extremely limited. We're talking a few thousand scattered across a very vast land and very diverse terrain too, because it's not all just open glacier. There's a whole lot of Arctic landscape that goes hand in hand with this. And so you can literally go weeks. If you do not know where to look for people, you could literally die after traveling, straight line for 2 weeks and never see a soul. That's not a monster that's trying to eat you. And even then, you're going to see fewer of those far between, because there's just not that many people. There's not just not that food is scarce, so it makes monsters scarce too. Otherwise, there'd be more game and more monsters. So we get the timeline of the Great Glacier, and then we get a little overview of it. Somewhere, someplace, there had to be a map with this, and I'm sure I have one. It's just not with this. So this, I'll have to go find where this belongs, because the map for this might be there. I might have borrowed it for something else. So relationship with other lands. So things like Vaza, Polachuk, Galena Snake, Galena Mountains, Castle Pelorius. Now this place is so remote, it's remote even by remote standards. So, this is literally a backwater that almost absolutely nobody purposely goes here unless they're, insane or they got suckered into looking for something. It's not even the Great Desert where they got a hidden civilization buried underneath it. The Great Glacier is just what it is. Nasty freezing, isolation, extreme environment. So we got entire sections. This is one of the things that I did find quite valuable in other games, is when I'm setting games in a setting in an extremely cold environment, you need to be able to, some common sense things. How do you keep stuff from freezing? How do you keep your own your own self from freezing? What do you do about frostbite? Snowstorms, fog, excuse me. Yeah, smog, right? Fairy ice, avalanches, snow blindness, sunburn, food and water, natural illusions, whiteout, looming, barrage, halo, sundog, light wheel, and then sound. And we got Heart Tree of the Peoples, the Ulutians, otherwise, once I said, a water-based. And you can't call them barbarians because they don't call them barbarians in here. They're just primitive societies. They can be considered barbarians, but they're not barbarians in that sense of the word. And so we get their laws, their makeups, some of their information, social standards, and family unit. Like I said, they spent a lot of time on just that section of going through these major human settlement or clans out here, because the bulk of the book is just that. All right, so I'm not going to go through all of them because I don't feel like doing it. I'll be honest. You get some frost giants, remoras, kapuk, seals, sled dogs, bunch of little communities here. Couple little local sea and mountain peaks. None of these communities are going to be very big. I think the largest one out there maybe 500. So here's Patak, Aleutian, or however you want to pronounce it. Population 350. Is isolated community located about 40 miles north of the Gossack chain, known for its domestic Kupak. Villages capture wild Kupak and blah blah blah. So you get a little bit of an idea there. One of the challenges sometimes is you find these really good settings, and there's a lot of information. This is a hefty book. There's a lot of information. Mostly some really detailed information on 3 or 4 primitive tribes of Eskimo-like people. So, in all reality, it's just kind of repetitive because there's only so much to vary in their environment. They significantly, obviously, somebody did their homework and studied a number of these primitive Arctic tribal groups. I use the term primitive loosely. By today's standards, by their standards, it would have been primitive. By today's, there's no such thing as a really primitive. Most societies aren't that primitive. They're dependent on Western technology or just technology like everybody else. It's just varying levels of it. That said, running a campaign exclusively in this kind of environment is monotonous in a lot of ways. I mean, the only real challenge here is survival, literal survival, and that makes great for maybe an afternoon. But if you were to go week after week of this, Excuse me. I'm just putting out my belief that it would not go well, or would not be sustainable. It's just like the setting is so damn remote. The only way you could, only couple ways in my mind would this place be so, even tappable from a per player's perspective, is if for some reason you accidentally get spirited or gated to this place. You're escaping the fire to end up in the icebox kind of thing. So you go from one catastrophic problem to a new one. And this one's survival. How the hell do we survive this and get out of here? Right? Or you're banished here on purpose by somebody who wants to punish you. That we're full circle. That how the hell forget about how we got here. How the hell do we get away? How do we survive this? Right. The third one is, well, we grew up here. Why? Why would you want? This is such a primitive, harsh, survival dominant environment. I wouldn't want to run any kind of low level campaign in it for that reason. There's no fun to it. I mean, it could be very meticulously challenging if you got to worry about frostbite and checking the weather 3-4 times a day and making damn sure you got blah 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 blah. You know, an example of 1 or 2 sessions of that sort of environment is probably a good thing because it's a learning experience for everybody. It gives you a view into a different terrain that you're not familiar with and perhaps don't want to. So when the future time comes along and even the threat of possible this might be enough for your characters to go, ooh, yeah, we're gonna pass on this one, right? It's just something to take that in mind, consider it, because is what it is. That said, if you can get a copy and you can get it cheap, it's worth having. I mean, I make the argument they're all worth having. Like I said, if you want some really in-depth information on a Arctic-based society for a campaign you're running, boom, you can't go wrong. I mean, everything you need to know about the environment, surviving it, living in it, hunting in it, interacting in it, etc., etc. It's like, they even make a brief foray into concept of war. Most of these tribes rarely go to war with each other. It's usually with a third party like frost giants or orcs or something, because it's a thing of survival or retribution in defensive survival. But to just go to war for another tribe for the sake of being angry at them for some reason, survival in life is so hard as it is, they don't bother with that crap. So then they make that point. These are not warlike tribes for a reason. It's survival is their war every day is just to survive and to live. So, in the rare circumstances an event takes place that's terrible, well, then they deal with it. But they don't actively go out of their way to invade their neighbors for what? They don't have any more resources to share or spare or whatever than the people invading. So, anyway, I'm not here. You're here. Missy's over there. Till next time. It just irritates me.